I stood on the balcony of my $4.5 million estate, watching the sun drop behind the blue spine of Lake Tahoe, and pressed send. $15,000. That was what my father, Robert, said he needed to save his credit score. The notification chimed on my screen. Transfer complete. 2 seconds later, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from him. I expected a thank you. Instead, I read the words that would end our relationship forever. Christmas is at the house this year, just real family only. We need the photos to look right for Lena's new fiancé. Stay in California. The cruelty was absolute. He took my money, and then he erased me. Before I tell you exactly how I made them regret that text for the rest of their lives, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone into the lake. I just stared at the screen, letting the silence of my empty house settle around me. My name is Mara. I am 29 years old, and in that moment, standing on the stone floor of a house my father didn't know existed, I finally understood my role in this family. I wasn't a daughter, I was an asset class, a diversified portfolio. My father, Robert, hadn't raised a child, he had managed a high-yield retirement fund. For 20 years, I had been trained to believe that love was a transaction. If I got straight A's, I earned a smile. If I stayed quiet, I earned peace. And if I paid off his $15,000 credit card debt, I earned the right to be acknowledged. But I had miscalculated the exchange rate. My money was good enough to save his reputation, but my presence wasn't good enough for his aesthetic. It reminded me of being 10 years old. It was Thanksgiving. Robert and my sister Lena sat at the main dining table with the guests, laughing over roast turkey. I was set up at the kitchen island, 20 feet away, eating a ham sandwich because there wasn't enough room at the grown-up table. I felt small then. I felt like a mistake. But standing on my balcony now, feeling the clean mountain air roll in off the water, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt expensive. They thought I was the struggling black sheep because I didn't wear logos and drove a practical car. They didn't know I had just sold my artificial intelligence patent for $15 million cash. They didn't know this estate wasn't a rental. It was mine. They used my $15,000 to fund a holiday I wasn't invited to because Lena's new fiancé didn't like my vibe. I looked at my bank balance on my phone. $15,400,000. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon a tear, but there was only clarity. This wasn't a heartbreak. It was a business decision. They wanted real family. Fine. I would give them exactly that. I opened my contacts list. I didn't scroll to my friends. I scrolled to the B list, the outcasts, the people Robert had discarded because they weren't shiny enough. I stopped at Aunt Colleen. Robert had banned her from family holidays 3 years ago because she got divorced, and he said her sadness was ruining the vibe. She was living in a studio apartment in Ohio, probably staring at snow-covered sidewalks. Then I found the Parkers, the old neighbors Robert had sued over a property line dispute just to prove he could. I didn't hesitate. I didn't worry about the cost. I started booking. First-class tickets, private car service to the airport. I wasn't just throwing a party, I was assembling a jury. I texted Colleen. Pack a bag. You're coming to the mountains. Bring a swimsuit. Christmas morning broke over the lake like a promise kept. I checked my weather app. In Fargo, the temperature was -19 with a wind chill that could freeze exposed skin in minutes. The news alert said the power grid was straining under a historic storm. I imagined Robert in his drafty living room, wrapped in layers of wool, trying to convince Lena that the rattling heater was charming rather than broken. Here in Tahoe, the thermometer read 78. The air smelled of pine and water. I walked out to the pool deck where my guests were already gathering. Aunt Colleen was there, reclining on a white chaise lounge. I had sent a stylist to her room that morning, and she looked transformed. The woman Robert called gloomy and embarrassing was wearing a silk caftan and oversized sunglasses, laughing at a joke Mr. Parker was telling. She looked like a queen in exile who had finally reclaimed her throne. I walked over and handed her a glass of vintage champagne. Her hand shook a little as she took it, her eyes filling. "Mara," she whispered, "I've never seen anything like this. I thought I'd spend Christmas watching reruns alone." I squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore, Colleen. You're the VIP." This wasn't just a party, it was a statement, and statements need to be heard. I had hired a professional production crew for the day. No grainy selfies, no filtered angles. I wanted high-definition proof of life. They set up a long banquet table right along the edge of the dock, draped in heavy white linen. We laid out a feast that would have made Lena's carefully curated aesthetic look like a cafeteria lunch. King crab legs, butter-poached lobster tails, towers of fresh fruit, and bottles of wine that cost more than Robert's monthly car payment. I took my seat at the head of the table. The drone operator gave me a thumbs up. The device roared to life, lifting smoothly into the sky. It swept over the estate, capturing the heated pool, the towering pines, the private shoreline, and the group of rejects raising their glasses to freedom. I looked up at the camera and smiled. Not the careful, polite smile I used to wear at Robert's table to avoid conflict, but a smile that said I owned the ground beneath my feet. When the footage was ready, I opened Instagram. My thumb hovered over the screen. I knew exactly what this would do. I knew it would fracture the fragile peace I'd maintained for years, but peace bought with silence is just submission. I uploaded the video. I chose a thumbnail of Colleen laughing, a lobster tail in her hand. Then I typed the caption. It had to be precise. It had to hurt. Hosting the people who stood by me when I had nothing. To the real family freezing in North Dakota, I hope the $15,000 I sent keeps the heat on. You're going to need it. I hit share. The progress bar zipped across the screen. Posted. I turned my phone face down on the table, the black glass reflecting the bright mountain sun. I didn't wait for the likes. I picked up my glass and turned to Colleen. "To real family," I said. She clinked her glass against mine. "To real family." The quiet didn't last. 10 minutes after I posted the video, my phone started vibrating against the stone tabletop. It didn't stop. It buzzed and skittered across the surface like an angry insect. I didn't touch it. I just watched the screen light up, darken, and light up again. Robert. Lena. Robert again. Lena's fiancé. Robert. 42 missed calls in 1 hour. I swiped open the notifications. The voicemails were a masterclass in unraveling panic. I played them on speaker, letting the sound drift across the pool deck so my guests could hear the soundtrack of my former life. The first message was from Robert. His voice was tight and controlled, the voice he used when he was trying to sell a bad deal as an opportunity. "Mara, pick up. People are calling me. They're saying you're in Tahoe. Is this some kind of rental? Take that post down. You're confusing people." I skipped ahead. 10 minutes later, the control was gone. "You ungrateful little brat. Do you have any idea who follows your sister? Her fiancé's mother just called. She thinks we're broke because of your caption. Delete it now." Then came Lena. She wasn't pretending to be calm. She was shrieking. "You ruined my aesthetic. Why are you tagging Aunt Colleen? She's wearing a caftan. Mara, you are humiliating me. Delete it or I will swear I will tell everyone you stole that money." I took a slow sip of wine. Stole the money. That was rich. I checked the engagement. The video had already been shared 400 times. The comments weren't confused. They were viciously clear. People love a villain, but they love watching a bully get exposed even more. Strangers were tagging Robert's business page. Lena's followers, mostly bots and pity follows, were suddenly wide awake, asking why she let her sister pay her heating bill. They weren't calling because they'd missed me. They were calling because I had taken the one thing they valued more than money, their narrative. For 30 years, they had written the story. I was the failure. They were the success. I was the burden. They were the sacrifice. One drone shot rewrote the script, and they were terrified. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and gave the rest of the afternoon back to the people in front of me. We watched the sun sink behind the mountains. We ate key lime pie shipped in that morning. We laughed until our sides hurt. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was the one who had dropped it. But narcissists don't disappear when they lose control. They escalate. At 2 a.m, the security panel beside my bed chirped. Motion detected. Main gate. I slipped into a robe and checked the monitor mounted on the wall. The night vision feed showed a rental SUV idling at the entrance of my long driveway. 2 figures stood in the headlights, slamming their fists against the iron gate. Even through the grainy black and white footage, I recognized the frantic, jerky movements of my father. They hadn't just called. They had boarded a plane. They had flown nearly 2,000 miles on Christmas Day, paid obscene last-minute fares, and driven through the mountain passes in a rage. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to force their way back into control. I watched Robert kick the gate on the monitor. He looked small on the screen, like a child pounding on a toy that had finally stopped working. I wasn't afraid. I pressed the intercom, my voice calm and flat in the cold night air. "Go home, Robert. You're trespassing." I slipped my feet into sandals and walked down the long gravel driveway. The chill bit at my skin, sharp and clean. I didn't hurry. I let them wait. I let them watch me approach, backlit by the security lights, steady and unbothered. When I reached the gate, Robert was gripping the iron bars so hard his knuckles were white. His travel clothes were wrinkled, his hair damp with sweat despite the cold. "Open this gate," he shouted, rattling the metal. "You think you can humiliate us in front of everyone? I am your father. You owe me this house. You owe me everything." I stopped a few feet away, just beyond his reach. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I wasn't looking at a parent. I was looking at a predator who had just discovered the cage was empty. Psychologists call this an extinction burst. It's what happens when a manipulator pushes the button that used to produce guilt, money, obedience, and nothing happens. They don't reflect, they panic, they escalate. They shout louder, hit harder, burn hotter, because their mind can't accept that control is gone. Robert wasn't there because he missed his daughter. He was there because his ATM had finally grown a lock. "I don't owe you anything, Robert," I said. "You made that clear. Real family only, remember?" "That was a misunderstanding," he snarled, "and you know it. Open the gate or I'll call the police and tell them you stole my credit card to buy this place." I almost smiled. "Please do." That's when Lena stepped forward. She wasn't yelling, she was smiling, and it was the ugliest, most triumphant smile I'd ever seen. She held a thick manila folder against her chest. "Let him call the cops, Dad," she said sweetly. "We don't need them. We have this." "What's that?" I asked. "Dad talked to a lawyer before we flew out," Lena said, flipping the folder open. She pulled out a document stamped with a notary seal from years ago. "Remember that family support agreement Dad made us sign when we turned 18? The one that said any assets acquired while living under his roof belonged to the family trust?" I froze. I remembered it. A piece of paper he framed as a lesson in responsibility before college. I'd thought it was a joke, a control trick. "You built your little AI project in our basement," Lena sneered. "You used Dad's electricity, Dad's internet, Dad's food. Technically, that $15 million belongs to the family. We're not leaving until you sign a quitclaim deed. Half to me, half to Dad." She shoved the papers through the bars. "Sign it or we'll sue you into the ground. You won't just lose the house, you'll lose everything." The night went still. The wind paused. Even my pulse slowed. Lena stood there clutching a contract signed when I was 17, convinced it owned my future. She smiled wider. "Checkmate. Open the gate." I laughed. Not warm laughter, cold, brittle laughter that made both of them hesitate. "You really flew all this way with a contract signed under pressure, thinking it overrides federal law?" I said. "But you made one mistake. You thought I was playing defense." I pulled out my phone. "You mentioned the $15,000 I sent earlier," I said, looking at Robert. "You told people I was paying your bills." "You did," he snapped. "No," I said. "You should have checked the beneficiary line." I turned the screen toward him. The transfer hadn't gone to a credit card company. It went to Sierra Ridge Federal Bank, Distressed Assets Division. Robert went still. "You haven't paid your mortgage in 8 months. The bank marked your loan toxic and wanted it off their books before year end." I swiped to another document. "I bought the note," I said quietly. "I didn't pay your bills. I bought your debt. I own your house, your roof, your driveway." Lena snatched the screen, scanned the screen, and drained of color. "This says you're the lien holder." "Correct. As of tonight, I'm not your daughter or your sister. I'm the bank, and you just tried to extort the property owner." Robert stared at me like the ground had disappeared. "I was going to wait until January," I said, "but since you came here threatening me, I tapped the screen. Foreclosure starts now." His phone chimed. He sagged against the gate. "It's freezing. Where are we supposed to go?" "I heard you have real family somewhere," I said. Lena started shouting about venues and photos and her fiancé's parents. "You won't be hosting anything," I said. "The asset freeze hits your credit in the morning." Security arrived then. Robert tried to puff himself up one last time. "You can't touch me. I'm her father." "Sir, you are trespassing," the guard said evenly. "Leave now." They retreated to the rental SUV. Lena screamed promises of revenge as they drove away. "Tell everyone," I called after them. "Tell them you tried to rob the bank, and the bank won." Their taillights vanished into the dark road. The night went quiet again. My legs felt light as I walked back towards the house, back to warmth and laughter and people who stayed because they wanted to, not because they needed something. Later, I opened the family group chat, deleted it, and walked down to the dock. Moonlight traced a silver path across the water. I thought about the girl who ate alone at the kitchen island. I wished she could see me now, owning the table, the house, and finally, myself. They wanted control. I paid them out and cut them loose. I didn't lose a family that night. I freed myself from one. Most people scroll past stories like this. The ones who subscribe are the ones trying to change something inside themselves. If this made you stop scrolling, subscribe to get more stories like this every day and share this with someone who needs to hear it.